Welcome to PrepAquatics.com. I'm Skylar King. As always, you can email me, Skylar at PrepAquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SkylarPrep. Back for the last really weekend of meets here before we hit Christmas break, and then we kind of have a lull until that first full week of January coming out of New Year's. And we'll talk about some of the observations I had from some of the smattering of the meets that we had in this past week. I mean, nothing truly earth-shattering, I would say, from the top two teams. It's kind of what we expected. We had a 136 medley out of Stevenson without Colin Zhang. It'll be interesting to see this weekend with the two big invitationals, the two by far most important, prominent, fastest invitationals that we have before the calendar turns every year, which is the Nequa Invite and Lake County. This is maybe, depending on the lineup that gets put in, because both the teams that we're talking about, Hinsdale Central at the Nequa meet, Stevenson at the Lake County meet, potentially could just go scorched earth and really post some incredible times. This is a weekend where a lot of teams historically do post really good swims going into Christmas break. Bit of a different year, however, just because you have Stevenson, absolutely nothing to prove, coming off a state championship. It's a new year. There's a few new players, but most of these guys, especially when you like Colin Zhang, O.Y. Rocky, Cohan, Curtin, all were big parts of the state championship last year. Really don't have anything to prove. Johnny Farber, because he was injured last year, maybe he's a little more fired up to really prove something this season individually. Obviously, they want to win the state championship as a team again, but there's something that can come with the experience and knowing that these in-season invitationals aren't that important, because in the long run, they really have no impact on how you're going to do at the state swim meet. Hinsdale is in an interesting spot because with what was happening construction-wise at their school at the beginning of the year, they started late. They only get 1 week of winter break between Christmas and New Year's. And so they're not going to have that same opportunity to do doubles every day and weights and any other dry land stuff that they might do like most of these other teams. And so personally, I'd be more than fine with them swimming tired at this Nequa Invitational, because quite frankly, there's no reason for them to go out and try to make a statement to anyone at that meet, certainly. And as they start working their way out of the quote unquote winter doldrums in January, if we have fast swims in January at invitationals, that's fine. That's generally when you shouldn't be hammering the yards as much at that point in the season as you do in mid to late December, and because you're working your way towards your first taper group really by the time you get to mid-January, because the conference meet, especially for the west suburbs, southern Illinois, etc., is a week earlier than it is for Stevenson and New Trier and the North Shore schools. So it'll be interesting to see how fast certain teams go. Obviously, Stevenson and Hinsdale Central specifically, a lot of top kids were missing last weekend because of junior nationals. And so this is another reason why this weekend could be big, especially for relays, because a lot of these schools didn't have all their best kids to be able to put their best relays together last weekend. And so it'll be fun to see how it all plays out. Make sure your Meet Mobile subscription doesn't expire before this Saturday. So to kind of review some of the things that caught my eye, I was obviously at New Trier Hinsdale. Hinsdale was missing 3 kids who would be, state level swimmers. And so nothing really crazy from them. I mean, they won this meet easily. They just have so much depth, and they didn't swim anywhere near their best lineup. But for New Trier, what this did was made me feel even better about picking them to get the final trophy. Charlie Buffton, 156.7 in the IM, 101.1 in the breaststroke. Those are 2 very strong swims, and shows me he's got a great potential to be a double scorer, especially in the IM. That 156 is more impressive to me than the 101. And then Max Listina, it really threw out swims that let you know that he's going to be a potential contender for the state championship in the 50 free. 21.3, 48.3 flat out, and then 20.5, 47.3 relay. And, this is really what New Trier needed. New Trier just didn't have the frontline sprinters last year, and they really only need one, because they've got a good enough supporting cast that if they have that one star, that supporting cast is going to be able to bring them to strong relay contention and giving them the ability to beat anybody except for Hinsdale Central and New Trier. Now, obviously, the decision for Josh Runkle is Listina going to go 3 relays, or is he going to swim the 50 and the 100 with 2 relays? That'll obviously depend a lot upon what the rest of the depth does. Ward Wilson is not out for the team, so he was obviously a returning state scorer, so that could complicate things for them, especially when you look at the 400 relay. Are they going to have 4 guys without Listina that can all go 46 high, 47 low, to make sure that relays safely in the top 6. But yeah, I was impressed by New Trier. 128.0 in the 200 relay, obviously with a 20.5 on there. They just touched out Hinsdale, who obviously was missing 3 of their better sprinters in junior nationals. But still, it was good to see New Trier be competitive. In that relay in particular, Hinsdale actually handled them pretty easily in the 400 relay, which was a surprise after what happened in the 200 relay. But New Trier is going to be a team that's going to have to be dealt with. If you want to win a trophy this year, you're going to have to beat New Trier, is really what it comes down to. And I don't think anybody can do it except the 2 teams that everyone expects to be contending for the state championship. They were without Aiden Music on top of this, and so the addition of him, he went 48 in the fly at junior nationals, and so he's right there in the mix. You would have to say with Jeffrey Howe from Hinsdale and Wairaki for a potential state championship in the butterfly, and I think that Music and Listina, that's an amazing 1-2 for them to have. Music, obviously, he's a returning scorer, but to have Listina really come out of the woodwork and become a number 1 sprinter with a bullet is really the difference between New Trier maybe having to struggle with the relays and some individual points, especially without Wilson. But Listina should more than make up for that. The other top team swim from Jane Nance that stood out was the Nate Harris led off the 800 relay at 138. Again, that's something we touched on at the beginning of the year. This just even more establishes him as a top 6 lock, in my opinion, in the 200 free, as Hinsdale Central figures out what to do with their lineup. There was some other kids from Illinois there. Nolan Miller, I believe I saw, from Champaign. Countryman from Rebus, I saw. But I really felt like, for the most part, the Illinois kids that went to junior nationals wasted their time. They really didn't go best times for the most part. That's why I highlighted Music's fly and Harris's 200 free, because those were really the only best times that really stood out to me. Obviously, a lot of these kids tapered right before the high school season. This was way too soon to taper again. And so I understand the superstar kids. Like last year when Filipovic went, I mean, he was contending for winning races at junior nationals, and so it made sense for him to go. But if you're going to go and struggle to get second swims, I don't know that it's really worth it to go to these meets when it's only a 14-week high school season. So that's my plea for the future, for people to stop going to junior nationals in the middle of the season that no one will listen to or pay attention to in the future. But at least I said my piece. A few other highlights that stood out from this past week. Marmion, Fenwick, Sandburg had a tri-meet. Not a ton to talk about there. Sean Wayner from Marmion did go 52.9 in the fly. Marmion went 3:17.5 in the 400 relay. I feel like there's already a number of 3:17 or betters in the 400 relay that could potentially be shaping up as the best relay. And 3:17 is not really a great time, but to me it's better than the teams I see going 1:31 in the 200 relay, which is what I'm seeing a lot of. And so I also think in the grand scheme, it's easier to get guys to go a decent 100 free than a 50 free. 50 free, you need a certain level of raw speed talent that not everybody has, but usually people can put together strong back halves, even if they're more of a distance swimmer in 100, that can still be valuable on a state 400 relay. Likewise, West Chicago 3:17.1. They had a relay meet of their own. Wake me up when these relay invitationals stop. It just, to me, is so hard to get anything out of it. Brady Johnson obviously is the headliner there, West Chicago's best swimmer. Personally for him, 46.3 leadoff in the 400 relay, 23.5 in the 50 back leadoff on the medley, 21.21 leadoff on the 200 relay. So he's obviously in top form as well. I mean, here's a kid that can swim just about anything at the end of the year. He's gonna swim the backstroke. He's a runaway favorite to win that race. However, I mean, if he doesn't want to swim the IM, especially if he says, hey, it's going to be hard to beat Zhang and Gamia, two kids that you know are going to swim the IM. Maybe I'll go try to win the 100 free. Or the 50 free, for that matter. He could do it, It doesn't mean he's for sure going to win, but he would certainly be amongst the favorites to win those races, especially the 50, I think. I do think the 100 is a much tougher field to crack into, just because you're pulling a lot more talent from different places with the 100 free. Again, kind of going back to that raw speed element, more, you have 200 freestylers pulling in to the 100 free, more so obviously than the 50, where 50 guys, generally maybe swim the fly, or the 100 free, but the 100 can really draw from a number of different places. So looking forward to this weekend. I'm going to be at Vernon Hills to see Stevenson in person before January. For me, hopefully they have pretty close to a sectional lineup in there. That's the most fun for me when I go. But Coach Lovedal doesn't know me anything, and they could win that meet with pretty much any lineup they want. Just like it seems like they can go 136 in the medley with like any combination of four guys that they want. But I think that it's an absolute possibility that Stevenson could go 134 in the medley relay at Lake County if they put their fastest four legs together. And I mean, we're seeing guys in the fly leg that are interesting, like Cohan. This is their opportunity to experiment and maybe make sure that they beat Hinsdale in the medley. However, I think that it's in their best interest it would be to again free those guys up for a second individual swim, rather than find a way to work them into the medley. But that's just me. It obviously depends on how many people could be freed up for a second individual race by doing whatever they're doing. I mean, the medley relay to me is gonna come down to how close Josh Bay can make it in the 50 breaststroke. Again, depending on what Hinsdale does in the backstroke leg, if Carl Baum ends up being the backstroker, he and Wyrocki are essentially a push. They've both been 23 low. Hinsdale, slight edge in the fly, you would think, with Howe coming back. Anchor, more or less a push, probably slight edge to Stevenson, the way that Cohan's swimming right now. And so it's I guess I should say it comes down to the breast and the fly. If Hinsdale can potentially out split Stevenson in the fly, with the graduation of Josh Song, more than what Colin Zhang can outsplit Josh Bay in the 50 breast, then Hinsdale probably wins the medley. If Zhang's just so utterly dominant that that's not possible, I think Stevenson wins the medley. And so, again, it's a big 12-point swing, one way or the other. And so I don't downplay how important that is, but I do think that the calculated risk there is if, for whatever reason, you load the medley and get second, then the meet might be over. And it really comes down to, is it worth gambling the entire meet on the first race? And I personally wouldn't do it, especially since they have a flyer in reserve that I think is going to be contending for a top 6 spot. So those are the type of things that I'm interested to see at Lake County with Stevenson's lineup. And, I'm obviously interested to see what everyone else throws out there from these other teams, because we're still looking for more potential top 10 teams to emerge as this season progresses. I don't think we've seen that much to change what we thought about most of these potential top 10 teams for the season. I will say Lyons Township needs. I don't know that we're finding the sprint freestylers to go around Quinn Collins the way they were able to find the sprint freestylers that were relative unknowns before the state swim meet last year. But I've also, sworn to never underestimate LT and their sprinters ever again after last year, and therefore I think I'm going to keep picking LT to finish top 6 in relays until I'm absolutely certain that their chances are 0. So we'll see how that plays out. Unfortunately, in the case of LT, they go to a relay meet. And so the first time we'll really see them at a big invitational is January. And that's just another tough thing as you go through December, where there's just not that many big invitationals with top teams swimming actual events that matter to projecting to the state meet. Regardless of that, after this weekend, maybe Christmas weekend, I'll be out with revised predictions for the state swim meet, with trying to use up as all the data I can gather from these first couple weeks of meets, and we'll have something to think about as we head into the back half of the season in January. I'll have some extra 3-day weekends since these holidays are on Sundays, to knock that out. And so next time we'll recap the invitationals from this upcoming weekend. The week after that, when there's no major meets, we will do the midseason predictions, and then we'll be getting ready to go with the first weekend of January invitationals following that. So if the elements are still out there as you're trying to get to these invitationals, drive safe. I'm hoping the roads are clear so I can make it up to Vernon Hills with no problem on Saturday. I'm going to make it there one way or the other. It's just a matter of how long it takes me from my house in the west suburbs. So next time, mid-season invitational recap. We'll see if Stevenson, Hinsdale, or any other teams post some really earth-shattering times that we really have to break down next weekend or next week on the show. And we'll be back next week to do just that here at PrepAquatics.com.